Welcome, dear friends here at Pax Europiana. I would like to comment about the Austrian elections and this tragic result of 29% for Putin's friends in Austria, and the Serb-Russian party, basically funded and supported many by the voters as well of the Austrian Serb community. They have voted for the so-called Freedom Party. Obviously, it's a dangerous party, and I don't recommend any cooperation with that party. And the good news, it's also not necessary. So there is a majority for the Austrian Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats together already with 93. And there is also the opportunity, what I think needs now to happen, is NATO membership of Austria. NATO membership of Austria can happen because, that's another good news, that these friends of Putin don't have any blocking minority. So they have less than needed to block constitutional changes. So the four main parties can work together, can cancel the Austrian neutrality, and then apply to NATO. And this is what Austria should do in order to be a normal country, to supply Ukraine, approve the free trade agreements, be a normal European Union member state, and not a kind of alpine fortress of extremists and xenophobics, anti-Semites and protectionists and anti-Ukrainians, anti-Kosovo, Islamophobes, like unfortunately some sadly want to transform Austria into. And that's of course absolutely wrong. So here's the way. Obviously, there will be some resistance in the population, but this has to be overcome by the forces of the law. And also must be very clear that the majority of 70% are in favor of NATO, and to be Austria a normal European member state, neutrality is absolutely immoral, unacceptable, and absolutely anti-democratic, and it's anti-solidarity, and it's irresponsible, and it leads ultimately to such a success of the extremist forces, because it's an entry gate to Russian propaganda, Serbian propaganda, which we see in the Austrian state television, which is the bulwark of such anti-American, anti-Ukrainian, anti-Kosovo narratives in the last decades. And they have basically also created these extreme right-wing parties' victory, because they always focus on that, and they endorse their narratives of the so-called FPÖ. And then we have this tragic situation with 29% of the people misled, because they are also technically good populists, and they know how to appease, and all the problems of the last years, they have been effective opposition, and then people who are disenfranchised vote for exactly such nonsensical political parties, which only bring joy to Mr. Orban, Mr. Fico, and ultimately Mr. Putin. And they are basically close to treason and completely unacceptable. So Austria has to reform, because when we do the reforms, there is no case then anymore for these pro-Russian positions. And the ultimately biggest question, where everybody has shied away, always with the argument, wait for the elections, because otherwise you strengthen Kickl, and now Kickl is strong. But luckily, and God bless us all, he has no minority blocking opportunities, because he is less than 33% of the mandates. And so we can do basically the reforms which are necessary, meaning ultimately the most important, obviously, the end of neutrality, the beginning of NATO membership, and then all the attached things which the Austrian identity based on this neutrality and this pro-Russian myths of whatever kind of historical lies, and they have led to this whole xenophobic, protectionist, populist, anti-foreigner mishmash which we have in our ideological mix today, and it's absolutely completely unacceptable and tragic. And so I hope there is now the moment of truth. As we have discussed in Albach, neutrality must go, must be abandoned on the garbage bin of history, and then we can be a normal European country, supply also Ukraine for victory, and purge all the Putinistas out of our institutions and out of our media. All these anti-Americans, anti-NATO, anti-Europeans, they should not be in our institutions. Oh, they can vote for the FPÖ, and they have done it already. That's the party for such people. Who hate us, basically, who hate Europe, who hate America, who hate the basis of our prosperity. They hate freedom, and they want a kind of a forced situation, authoritarian state, a kind of Orban system where media is under control and where we are somehow stuck forever in neutrality, which I oppose absolutely, and which is absolutely wrong for our country. And that's the situation. So now it's the moment. It's absolutely the moment for change, and it's coming. And the coalition should be obviously between Christian Democrat and Social Democrat. It's also possible to integrate the Greens and the Liberals if they want to share in the government. Two ministers on each side would be possible in exchange for ending neutrality and NATO membership. This should be absolutely the condition the Austrian People's Party puts to all potential members of a new coalition government. It's NATO. And then they have to approve it. First of all, the end of neutrality, and then, of course, the membership. And that's the way to do it. And that's absolutely the way it has to happen. There's no other way for Austria, because if we mess up like this and then we have another inconclusive, nonsensical coalition, or again the argument, we have to work together with the FPÖ in order to break their momentum and they will fall later. That's all possible, but it's time of war, and to give the FPÖ power in wartime is absolutely unacceptable for the rest of the Europeans, and it's also very wrong for us here in Austria, and it has to be rejected. Good. So despite the sad result, there is a lot of tokens of hope, and I hope wisdom will prevail and we will join NATO within actually very short time frame, and it will be explained well, and that's the way it should be. Thanks a lot for NATO from European Austria. Bye.